everyone, it's Sarah and welcome to my crochet channel. Today's video I'm going to show you how to crochet the bamboo lace cowl that can also be made into a scarf. It's just a matter of how long you want to make it and if you want to join the two ends together. Now this scarf is made with the Pantone bamboo yarn. It comes in a hank like this. You've got 5 different colors, and these are 5 separate balls of yarn. Now, if you want to know how to open this up and roll it into balls, I did another video with the regular Pantone yarn, and I'll put that link up there at the top there. You can click on that and it will show you how to unattach everything and to roll it into 5 separate balls of yarn. You can use this yarn on this pattern as well. Just keep in mind that the bamboo is a medium number 4 and the regular is a number 5 bulky. But if you look at the strands of yarn, they look pretty much the same to me. Oh, and remember, this is a free crochet pattern on my blog, and I'll put that blog link down in the notes underneath this video. The scarf and the cowl measure about 7 inches across. The length is determined by the amount of rows that you do. 2 rows equal approximately an inch. And the cowl will have 80 rows, and the scarf will have 160. And so the length is determined by how many rows that you make. All right, let's get started. We're going to begin with our slip knot, and then we're going to chain 27 chains. I've stitched my 27 chains, and we're going to begin by placing a double crochet in the 4th chain from the hook. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So yarn over, put your hook through, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through the first 2, yarn over, and go through the second 2. And now we're going to chain 2. We're going to skip the next 2 stitches and stitch a V-stitch in the next stitch. And the V-stitch is a double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet in the same stitch. We're going to chain 2, and then we'll repeat that. Skip 2 and stitch a V-stitch in the next stitch. Double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet in the same stitch. All right, let's take a look real quick. We've got 2 double crochets, chain 2, skip 2, a V-stitch, chain 2, skip 2, and a V-stitch. Now we're going to chain 4. We're going to skip the next 4 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4. And in the next stitch, we're going to stitch a double crochet, chain 3, and a double crochet. It's similar to the V-stitch, only we have a chain 3 in the center instead of a chain 1. We're going to chain 4. We're going to skip the next 4 stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4, and stitch a V-stitch in the next stitch. Double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet. Chain 2, skip the next 2 stitches, and V-stitch in the next stitch. Double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet in the same stitch. We'll chain 2, we'll skip 2, and that will leave us with 2 chains, and we'll stitch 1 double crochet in those last 2 chains. All right, I'm going to go ahead and just chain 3, And then let's take a look at it. Now, it might be a little wonky. It's okay. As we move along, it will lay nice and flat and beautiful. And this is the way that your first row should look. 2 double crochets, chain 2, V-stitch, chain 2, skip 2, V-stitch, chain 4, skip 4, double crochet, chain 3, double crochet, chain 4, skip 4, V-stitch, chain 2, skip 2, V-stitch, chain 2, skip 2, and 1 double crochet in the last 2. And this is the foundation that we're going to be working up on for our scarf or cowl. We chained 3, and we're going to turn. We're going to place 1 double crochet in the second double crochet because our chain 3 counts as our first double crochet. We're going to chain 2. We'll stitch a V-stitch in the chain 1 space of the next V-stitch. Double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet. Chain 2 and repeat. V-stitch in the chain 1 space of the V-stitch. Double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. All right, now we're going to chain 3. And we're going to come to the chain 3 space of this stitch. And in this chain 3 space, we're going to stitch 5 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We're going to chain 3, and then we'll repeat what we did on the 2 V-stitches on this side over here. So we'll go in the chain 1 space and stitch a V-stitch. This yarn's a little bit slippy. There we go. Chain 2. We'll go to the chain 1 space of the next V-stitch and stitch that V-stitch. Chain 2, and that brings us to those 2 stitches. We'll stitch 1 double crochet in the last 2 stitches. Chain 3 and turn. And so now you can see the lace starting to form. We have our 2 double crochets, chain 2 with our V-stitches, then we chain 3, 5 double crochets in the chain 3 space, chain 3, V-stitch, chain 2, V-stitch, chain 2, and then our last 2 double crochets. And this is how row 2 should look. All right, let's do row 3. Now row 3 begins the same, the center's a little bit different, and then we end the same. So our chain 3 counts as our first double crochet, and we're going to double crochet in that next double crochet. We're going to chain 2, do our V-stitch in the chain 1 space of the V-stitch, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, then chain 2, and repeat in this next V-stitch. All right, so that brings us to the center. All right, we're going to chain 2. And now we're going to go to the first double crochet of those 5 double crochets in the center. And we're going to stitch 2 double crochets in the first double crochet. And then we'll stitch 1 double crochet in the next 3. So there's 2 and 3. And then in that last double crochet of those 5, we'll stitch 2 double crochets. 1 and 2. All right, so now we don't have 5 anymore. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and chain 2. All right, so now we're going to complete the end the same way we did on the previous row. We chain 2 here, we go to the center, chain 1 space of our V-stitch, and stitch a V-stitch. Chain 2, V-stitch in the V-stitch, chain 2, and then we end with those 2 double crochets. 1 double crochet in the last 2. And chain 3. Alright, so here's our row 3. And what you'll notice is the beginning and the end of all the rows will be the same. And then what we're going to be doing is rotating these 3 rows, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, as we go. It makes a lovely and beautiful lace cowl or scarf. Alright, we did our chain 3 and we're going to turn. Now we have to do a row that looks like our first row. Alright, so we'll repeat what we did at the beginning. Our chain 3 counts as our first double crochet. We double crochet in that next double crochet. Chain 2, V-stitch in the V-stitch. Chain 2, V-stitch in the chain 1 space of the V-stitch. We're going to chain 4, and we're going to go to the center stitch of these 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4. It's the 4th double crochet, and we're going to stitch a double crochet, chain 3, and double crochet. And then we'll chain 4. So what that does is that puts us right in the center of these 7 stitches, because we want to keep this right in line. So we go to the 4th double crochet, which is the center double crochet of those 7, and we stitch the same stitches there that we did down here. Double crochet, chain 3, double crochet in the same stitch, which is that center double crochet, and then chain 4. And now we'll just finish the back end the way we did the front. Or I should say the opposite end. So we'll go in that V-stitch and stitch a double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet in the V-stitch, chain 2, and we'll go right in that V-stitch and stitch another V-stitch, chain 2, and then 1 double crochet in the last 2 stitches, and chain 3. And so I think you can see how the repeat for the scarf is going to work. We'll be alternating rows 1, 2, and 3 over and over again. So the next row will be this one, then the next row this one, then this one again. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, over and over again. So what you will need to do is to continue to repeat rows 2, 3, and 4 for 76 more rows if you're doing the cowl. And if you're making the scarf, you'll repeat rows 2, 3, and 4 for 156 rows. But what do we do when we change colors? There are a couple ways that you can change colors. Because we're working with individual balls of yarn, you can change colors when you know you're getting to the end of your one ball to join in your next ball at the end of a row. You can go ahead and join in your next color before you start your next row. Make sure you chain 3 after the color change, and then you can come back in and weave these ends in. Another way that you can do that, which is what I like to do, is just to continue with the ball of yarn until it's at its end. So here's my chain 3. I'm going to turn. I'm going to do my double crochet in my double crochet, chain 2, then I'll go to my V-stitch, And I'm noticing that my ball of yarn is almost gone. So what I do is I go ahead and do what's called the Russian join. And you can take your needle and join them together like this. And it's just a quick little way. You just thread it on, go through some of the fibers like that, and then you take the other side and you thread it on and also go through some of the fibers on the other side. Let me just do a few there. All right. And then you can gently pull those ends to make that come together. You can trim these off a little bit. And then you just go right on stitching. Now, some people don't care to do it this way because you end up with your rows not being even. Okay? Put those strings to the back. They need to be weaved in a little bit. And you end up like this with your rows not being even. And some people don't care for that. And so, like I said, you can either join when you see your yarn running low at your beginning of your next row, or you can just add it in however you want to. I kind of like things random, and so I'm going to do mine this way. And then once you can come, after you've stitched through it, you can come back and clip off those ends. I like randomness sometimes, depends on what I'm making. And so you'll see the rows won't be completely even if you do it this way. And that gives you a couple of options. When you're working with a ball of yarn where the colors change, it's not a problem. You know it's going to do that. But if you can control where your color change is, it makes, for a nice, neat, even color change at the ends of the rows. So like I say, it's up to you how you want to do your scarf. I've completed the repeats that I want for my cowl. And if you're following the pattern, if you do your repeats, you should have 80 rows for the cowl and 160 for the scarf. But of course, you can adjust that however you want to, make it a shorter cowl or a longer scarf. It's totally up to you. I'm going to be making the cowl, but if I was making the scarf, when I finished my last row, I would just tie off and weave in my end, and I would be finished, and I would have a beautiful lacy scarf. But since I'm making mine into a cowl, or what some would call an infinity scarf, which means it's just hooked together at the end, I'm going to make it into that. So I'm going to put the two ends together, and I'm going to turn it around like this. Get my yarn out of the way there. And we're just going to line it up. And we're going to just stitch across. I'm going to put my loop across there. And we're just going to stitch slip stitches across. So we'll go in the next chain on this side and the next stitch on this side. Pull a loop through, then pull that loop through the loop on your hook. And you'll do this all the way across the bottom if you want to join it into an infinity or cowl type scarf. I prefer a cowl or a joined scarf because I am terrible about losing scarves when we go out to dinner or to church or to a movie or something. I'm always taking them off and setting them next to me like in the booth or something, and then I leave it there. I'm just going to continue working across the bottom of the two ends of my cowl or scarf, stitching slip stitches and stitching it together. Like I said, I'd rather not lose this beautiful lace scarf. And even if you make it long, you can still hook the two ends together and just have a long circle scarf. All right, so I'm going to continue what I'm doing. stitching slip stitches, stitching the two ends together. So I've got the end of my two ends stitched together with slip stitches, and then I'm going to thread the end of the yarn onto my needle, and I'm just going to weave that in. Something that I have discovered with this bamboo yarn is that it's very, very slippery. And so it's real important that when you're weaving in your ends to go through some of the fibers of the yarn, to go one way and then go back another. There's nothing more frustrating than to make something beautiful and then have the ends stick out. All right, so I cut about an 8-inch piece. I had about a 20-inch piece left. And so I kept it a little bit long. I want to go back and forth, going through the fibers so that it's going to stay all tucked in. So here is my completed bamboo lace cowl, or infinity scarf, circle scarf, whatever you want to call it. And remember, if you don't want to hook the ends together and you want it to be a scarf, that works too. The beauty of this pattern is how gorgeous the lace repeats are and how it lays beautifully with this bamboo yarn.